My name is Lenny Santiago with Daytona International Speedway. Thank you for joining us today. With me today is Joey Chitwood III, President of Daytona International Speedway, who will provide an update on our exciting Daytona Rising project. Daytona Rising is a $400 million reimagining of an American icon. It'll create a modern motorsports stadium with premium fan amenities, including wider seats, more comfortable seats, twice as many restrooms, 3 times as many concession stands. It'll also feature added conveniences like 11 football field-sized social areas that we call neighborhoods, 40 escalators and 14 elevators to help people get around the facility, 1,600 video screens, Wi-Fi, and a lot more. The project will be completed in time for the 2016 racing season. And for more information, I encourage you to visit www.daytonarising.com, where we also have webcams available so you can watch the construction in progress. With that, I'd like to turn it now over to Joey Chitwood. Joey?
Thanks, Lenny. I appreciate it. It's been 4 very long months so far in terms of preparing for Daytona Rising. A lot of work's occurred, and we wanted to bring some images to explain to everyone what it really takes to build the structure to support all the new grandstands that we're adding, concourses, all those levels. So in front of you, we've got a number of images that I want to walk you through. I'm going to define for you what a pile is and what a pile cap is, because that's the concrete support structure that will be in place to add all the steel and all the other elements to. So the images to my right, the images to your left, 3 images show you what a pile is. A pile is an 18-inch diameter, 35-foot deep hole in the ground in which we fill with concrete. That provides the support to then build a pile cap on. A pile cap is reinforced rebar, 85 separate pieces, that also has 7-foot long, 12 2.5-inch diameter bolts that the steel would attach to. This starts the basics of concrete foundations in the ground. So we look to your right, my left. A couple other images show you then the concrete that goes around these piles that are underneath this pile cap. Well, I asked the engineers, how many pounds does it take to put concrete in the ground? What are we doing? We came up with some numbers for you. It actually will take 138 bags of 60-pound concrete to build 1 pile. There are over 2,500 piles in the project. That represents 8,220 pounds per pile. When you multiply that by the 2,500 that are in the property, we have over 20 million pounds of concrete in piles alone on the property. Now, with all of those piles to provide the support of a pile cap, a pile cap is 22 cubic yards of concrete. To put it in perspective, a pile was 2 cubic yards of concrete. So when you actually take that 22 cubic yards and you put it in 474 pile caps, you have close to 45 million pounds of concrete in pile caps alone. Right now, we have 65 million pounds of concrete in the ground that we've done over the last 4 months to be prepared to attach steel to actually build the structure. Now, to say that that number was impressive, it surprised me to the point that I didn't believe it. I can't believe in 4 months we've done that work. So, in this age of internet, I decided to Google concretecalculator.com. And who knew there is a website that has concretecalculator.com on it, and I actually plugged in my own numbers to verify that we put 65 million pounds of concrete in the ground. Again, a number that is just phenomenal. But when you think about spending the $400 million, it's impressive that we've done that much work to date. To put that in perspective, we actually put 50,000 tons of asphalt on the property when we repaved Daytona. That's 100 million. So at this point, we're 65% of the way there as to the asphalt that went into the repaving of Daytona a couple years ago. But that's only after 4 months. Over the next year and a half, there's going to be additional concrete that goes in terms of concourses and other areas around the property. So those images in front of you, the 3 to my right, your left, and the 2 on the far end to your right, my left, kind of show you what it takes to build a pile cap, and then that's the structure that we'll support. One of the other unique things that we're doing right now is to get ready to actually manage the crowd for Speed Weeks. And so we call this race-ready preparation. And so the image directly to my left, the first one to your right, shows an overhead of the Daytona International Speedway. And more importantly, it shows you where the grandstands will be in the future construction, where the injector gates will be, but also it shows you the temporary gates that we've had to build to manage the crowd for all of the events in January, February, and March. There'll be no changes to the seating manifest in 2014. It's how we get you to your seat that'll be the unique elements. What we had to do to start this process is actually disconnect all of the water and sewer so we could do the underground work. we have moved all of the ticket gates about 300 yards away from the stadium itself. And what you can see from that image is a paved walkway that goes from that temporary ticket gate all the way into the stadium. And so what we've been able to do is separate you from the construction area. But what will happen, you're basically walking through a chute with construction to your left and to your right as you enter the property. And there will be work that still occurs in those areas, probably early in race week and some of the other days, but this is a way to separate our fans from the construction, but also they're going to get probably the best view of construction to date. Some of the things that we're doing right now, it's not just the installation of the temporary gates, it's the fencing that goes around it, the paving of the walkways to get you there, directional signage to make sure that fans know which gate to enter and where they're going, the landscaping and lighting. We also had to reinstall all of the water and sewer lines to get everything ready. We had to create temporary locations for hospitality, whether it's the 1876 Club or general hospitality. We have to build temporary kitchens for our Americrown caterer. We actually have to create a temporary lobby for the Sprint Tower elevators. We demolished those buildings early on in the process. We're widening the pedestrian areas next to the DIS tour building. We have to reestablish power and connectivity to all the ticket gates. We use technology to scan the tickets, so we have to get that up and running again. And then also just make sure from an existing grandstand perspective that we're ready to manage the customers. Again, more paving, more wireless, more routes to get you there. So really what you have in front of you are two distinct things. One is the construction and now the operation. Our Race Ready program, I can tell you the document is probably 8 or 9 pages long of all of the activities that have to occur to get back into operation mode. But I think from the image to my left, your right, it just shows you how massive the structure is, what it'll take to operate the venue the first 3 months of the year, but wanted to give you a little bit of color on what it's going to take to build it, and hopefully the 65 million pound number impresses you as it did us. So with that, Lenny, I'd be happy to take some questions.
Great. Thank you very much, Joey. We'll take questions from the audience. Please raise your hand. We've got mic runners in the crowd that'll come to you. Please state your name and affiliation. We'll start up here with Reed, if we can get a microphone up here, please.
Reed Spencer with NASCAR Wire Service. How complicated was it to figure out how to do the ongoing work and continue to conduct all the events up until 2016? Did you use computer programming to figure that stuff out?
If I were to show you the actual construction schedule, and so I might have an 8 or 9 page document as it relates to what Race Ready Preparations Daytona has, but the novel that Barton Mallow has as it relates to the lockstep process to follow is almost unconscionable. The fact that there's that much that has to get done. It also reinforces why it's 2.5 years to get there, because of these windows of time that we cannot construct on the property. And so a lot of man hours, a lot of attention to detail, a lot of meetings between Daytona and Barton Mallow, and it's still ongoing. We've got 14 figured out. There's still some elements in 15 that we're working through based on the timing of construction. We've built some days in, meaning we're ahead of schedule right now, which is great. But you never know where you're going to be like middle of 14 or into 15. It could change that schedule. 14 without a seating manifest change, we look okay. 15, we will have some seating challenges because we'll have new seats and old seats at the same time. We're actually working through a process right now on relocating fans that would be affected for the 15 Daytona 500. But it's not just running the property, it's making sure that everybody knows what's going to happen come event time. We want to make sure that we do a good job because it's going to be challenging enough with construction and operation. We've got to make sure that we've got a dialed-in plan just from a guest services perspective. When you communicate to the customer on how the route might be different to get to your seat when you've gone through that gate for the last 20 years and it's not in the same location. So it's not just the plan, it's how we're communicating the plan, and today actually we started that process as well.
Mike Hembry, Athlon Sports. I wanted to ask you about, you mentioned a little bit about 15, but what's your estimation of how this will look for February 15? And how much, if any, did you have to dial back from the original grand plan when some of the state stuff didn't work out?
Well, I think you're going to be blown away by the steel that you see in 14, because we have steel coming up out of the ground right now and pretty high at this point. 15, you will see more steel, the skeleton of the grandstand itself. It will be very substantial at that point. The things that we had to dial back in the program is really the midway area and some of the areas outside of the injectors and the gates and those elements. So those were the elements that we scaled back. We are going to go to Tallahassee again and talk to the legislature about a potential partnership, so we've not given up on that. We think that the investment that we're making and how other sports teams are treated in Florida, I think that we deserve some fair treatment. So we're going to go back to talk about that, and if provided that opportunity, we'll look at the scope again and see if we can enhance it with some of the midway areas and the elements that we had to cut out.
Okay, next we'll go to Dwight, then over to the right, and then we'll come back to George. Dwight?
Dwight, racestake.com. Joey, what is about the entire project, what has impressed you the most so far, and what do you think fans, once it's complete, what do you think the fans are going to be most impressed by when they walk into this incredible facility?
I think without a doubt, just the magnitude of it. As we've shown images back in February when we did our first press conference, but now to start to understand that there's 65 million pounds of concrete in the ground, and to see the steel structure right now, our staff is impressed that it's so high and it's so big. I think our fans are going to be blown away at the magnitude of what it takes to rebuild the entire front stretch grandstand at Daytona International Speedway. It's not just replacing the seats. It's a brand new structure that's probably goes from the current grandstand about halfway to International Speedway Boulevard. And so the diagram, again, to my left, starts to give you a sense of how big it is. For us, the speed with which we've gotten the concrete in the ground and the fact that steel is coming up out of the ground now is pretty impressive. I'm not sure I thought there'd be this much activity, or activity enough that's pretty impressive to talk about this early on after 4 months.
Over to the right and then to George.
Richard Newton, San Francisco 49ers are saying they have the state-of-the-art that they're building. A lot of technology. Instead of having more vending stations, now you can, when the new stadium opens, the hot dog will be delivered to your seat. What kinds of technological innovations similar to what the 49ers are doing will be happening at Daytona?
Well, actually, when you think about it, if you think about innovation, I'm not sure anybody has been able to actually build a venue and operate it for 2 years at the same time. The luxury of building across the street or a new location, actually, I'd like that right about now, not having to worry about race-ready preparations and operate at the same time. What we try to do is look at all of these new stadiums and venues out there, understand what really is a great fan amenity there, but how do we marry it into the motorsports world? What's important in our world that's different than a football game or a basketball game? And so technology is a key. We understand that. And so being connected, looking at our social zones, these 11 football field-sized neighborhoods that provide all of the amenities and the ability to actually interact socially. That's where all your F&B and merch and other elements are. The wider seats, the ability to have escalators in which we have none. It's taking all of those things that seem to be working now and marrying it into our world, and that's going to be a big deal for us. When you take a 50-year-old property and realize that you've done such a good job with it, but at this point it needs some love and care. I think we're excited that we've got a great plan in place. And we've seen a lot of new venues in the state of Florida go in, whether it's Amway Arena in Orlando, some folks in Tampa, obviously the Dolphins Stadium. They've done a lot of work to it the last couple years. We like good examples that we can copy and incorporate into ours. And unfortunately, though, for us, fortunately or unfortunately, I guess, we are the ones who are funding this. We're not getting state subsidies. We're actually the ones making this investment. I think that's all the more impressive about where we think the sport is going, and the fact that we're putting our flag in the ground and saying it's not going to go anywhere. We're going to invest $400 million in the Daytona International Speedway, the biggest investment our company has ever made in anything. I think that's how strong we feel about the future of the sport and really the quality of the Daytona 500 itself.
George?
Yeah, George Diaz, Orlando Sentinel, getting a little bit off track here with Daytona Rising. Mike Helton was talking the other day about it's not necessarily set in stone about the NASCAR's chase schedule moving forward, maybe moving some pieces around. Would you be open to the idea of future if the opportunity came to move the summer race and maybe incorporate your nice new track into the chase? I mean, what are your thoughts, or are you more the traditionalist that will stick with what we have?
George, I would tell you this. I think that any answer I might give to that question is probably going to get me in a little trouble. Look, we want to do what's good for the industry, and I applaud NASCAR for making the investment in the competition and the improvements they're starting to see. I think us jumping in and making the same types of investment improvement to the fan amenity side, I think both sides of the street, NASCAR and ISC, are focused on the right thing, which is about the fan. Great competition, great amenities, a great experience. As it relates to Daytona and its placement in the schedule, I'm open to anything that makes sense for our fan. And NASCAR would have to be part of that. So definitely something to think about. Right now, though, in terms of short term, it's all about getting this ready by January of 16 because we have no choice but to be there. Now, we're well experienced with that, and when we had the repave, we had no choice but to be ready by the season before. We're going to do the same thing with this. We're going to do a great job. We'll get the construction done. We'll be ready by January of 16. Schedule, that'll be secondary as to getting the property done.
Any additional questions? Joey, any closing remarks?
You know, I'd just like to reiterate one thing, and that is, as you look at the sport and where we're heading and the commitment NASCAR has made in terms of competition and the drivers and what we're trying to do on that side, I think that Daytona and the International Speedway Corporation are doing the same thing on the fan amenity side. We all understand the challenges getting our fans to attend live sporting events, and so whether it's the competition side through NASCAR, whether it's the amenity side through Daytona and International Speedway Corporation, it's a commitment to give fans the best experience possible. And so I'm proud that I work at a company that has stepped up to the plate and is making the largest investment in its company's history to live up to that side of the bargain. So I'm pretty impressed. I'll give you another update in Speed Weeks. We're going to talk about steel then, and a lot of steel at that point. So be ready. And for everyone else out there, if you go to DaytonaRising.com, we've got a number of webcams up in which you can actually manipulate the cameras and look at all the construction to date. I think you'll be impressed, but come February, it's going to blow you away.